On a February morning in 2025, Donald Trump once again shocked the world by declaring he would take over the Gaza Strip, moving 2 million Palestinians off the land they call home and transforming it into an American-style seaside paradise. He dubbed it the Riviera of the Middle East, delivering the phrase with the cadence of a luxury resort advertisement. The announcement came during a joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, sparking immediate reactions from social media and news outlets from Miami to Moscow. According to Trump, Gaza's residents would be relocated to nicer places such as Egypt, Jordan, Sudan, Morocco, even Puntland or Libya. Whether this move would be temporary or permanent remained unclear, but rumors swirled that the U.S. was prepared to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to persuade other nations to accept the displaced population. Gaza, once emptied, would be cleared of rubble and mines, then rebuilt with marinas, seven-star hotels, and glamorous casinos, looking more like a high-end real estate venture than a humanitarian reconstruction plan. The international backlash was immediate and fierce. Jordan insisted, "We don't want it and they don't want it." Egypt reminded the world that Sinai is not a refugee camp, and the United Nations condemned the scheme as blatant ethnic cleansing. Media from Haaretz to The Guardian compared the idea to the pre-war Madagascar plan. Netanyahu enthusiastically endorsed the proposal, later stating that if Gazans wanted to leave for free, Israel and the U.S. would help make it happen. U.S. commentators called it a political distraction, while the global community viewed it as a violation of human rights law. The media quickly turned the story into a spectacle. Memes of Trump posing beside a Gaza Riviera blueprint, TikTok edits showing before and after transitions from bombed-out streets to sparkling beaches. The hashtag #ShariGazaRiviera exploded like a viral movie campaign. Some supporters hailed it as a creative solution, while critics denounced it as genocide in disguise. Behind the scenes, things got even more surreal. Sources claimed 3D concept renderings already existed, featuring resorts with casinos, shopping districts, and luxury marinas. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, reportedly floated the idea the previous year. No one could or would explain who would foot the bill, control the territory, or take responsibility for the consequences. Regardless, Gaza Riviera proved to be a media masterstroke, shocking, easy to meme, and highly shareable. Trump gained another chance to project himself as a man who speaks and acts boldly, while opponents gained fresh ammunition to warn of flagrant breaches of international law. Meanwhile, Gaza, a land already burdened with immense suffering, was dragged once more into the global political theater, where human rights took a back seat to optics and showmanship. A few months after the Gaza Riviera bombshell, the political temperature hadn't cooled. It had spread far beyond the eastern Mediterranean into even fiercer arenas, from America's trimmed-down human rights agenda to intensifying bombings in Gaza and a flurry of international back-channel handshakes. Trump didn't just take over the media narrative. He made the entire world unexpectedly preoccupied, as if nobody could think about anything except making memes. Around this same time, the U.S. State Department under Trump reformatted its famous Human Rights Report. Long considered a global reference point, this year's edition came noticeably diluted. Sections on LGBTQ+ rights, gender-based violence, and racial discrimination were heavily cut. Uganda's draconian anti-LGBTQ+ laws got only a soft name drop, and Gaza simply vanished from the document. Traditional allies like France, Germany, and the UK were called out for censorship, while pro-Trump governments like Hungary and El Salvador were handled with kid gloves. The opposition branded it a politically contracted report, not a human rights standard, while a State Department spokesperson spun it as a rebalancing, fair, and unbiased. Social media responded in the only way it knows how, with a photoshopped cover swapping Human Rights Report for MAGA Rights Report. At the same time, the Trump campaign was running a tightrope act between media spectacle and political messaging. Biden's camp quickly cut together a split-screen ad. On one side, the stately Kennedy Center for the Arts. On the other, military footage, hammering the point that a president should separate art from power. Team Trump played it off. I just say what needs to be said, wherever I am. Online, hashtags Hugh from Symphony to Security and MAGA Rights took turns trending, fueled by viral video remixes, one particularly popular clip dubbed military drum rolls over an orchestral performance, half parody, half pointed commentary. Meanwhile, Gaza itself remained a nightmare with no end in sight. Over 61,000 people had been killed in nearly 2 years of war, and more than half the population was displaced, starving, and exhausted. Israel's calls for civilians to temporarily move rang eerily like echoes from 1948. Hamas stayed defiant, negotiating only with Egypt and rejecting all relocation offers. In Cairo, Egyptian and Hamas delegations kept grinding through ceasefire talks, while thousands queued for aid. Some killed by bombs hitting supply points mid-distribution. The wider Middle East wasn't staying silent. London asked the pointed question, what kind of army raises everything, then hands out humanitarian relocation vouchers? Europe grew sharper, with some countries announcing arms embargoes and others proposing to pull investments, signaling that Israel, once a close ally, was starting to face isolation. Trump, in his usual sideways swipe, hinted the EU might be hiding its own bias, a single line enough to stir an online storm. And that was just the visible part of the iceberg. In Washington, late-night shows open with the line, yesterday Trump said he'd take over Gaza. Today, the Human Rights Report just says MAGA. Political talk shows compared his moves to boasting about perfect recall, but forgetting the basics of policy. Social media turned the Trump Rights Report into a fast fashion meme. Truth optional, but highly marketable. Traders joked that oil prices would start bouncing to the rhythm of every very severe consequences tweet, proving that, at least for now, political drama was hogging the spotlight over oil prices, Brexit, or taxes. In short, by this second act, Gaza Riviera had morphed into a global television event, spawning debates over human rights, stirring up storms in Gaza, and bleeding into the heart of American politics. Trump had played the too sensational to ignore card, and whether you laughed, cursed, or worried, one thing was certain: he'd made it impossible to look away. Not long after the Gaza Riviera splash and the suspiciously cleaned-up Human Rights Report, the American political stage queued up yet another act in the ongoing drama. This time, the White House fine-tuned its ambitions to perform at the Kennedy Center. Not as an honored guest, but with Trump seemingly determined to be both the host and the star, as if thinking, if I'm in the movie, I might as well direct it too. One random evening, Trump unveiled the honorees for the Kennedy Center honors, names like Sylvester Stallone, Kiss, Gloria Gaynor, Michael Crawford, and then crowned himself the event's chair. He coyly added, I didn't want to be MC, but if they invite me, I'll do it. Press inquiries were deflected by his media team. He's redefining what it means to honor artists. Someone who truly understands art should lead it, not some ivory tower committee. It was a twist worthy of a political reality show. The entertainment world laughed out loud. Rumors swirled that Tom Cruise declined the honor, citing a packed filming schedule for Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. Online, the public leaned toward mockery. Guess Trump's after the MVP of Controversy award, not any Oscar. One talk show quipped, if the MC appoints himself, should the artist start asking whether the gig is earned or just sponsored? But the mingling of culture and politics ran deeper, spilling into the now infamous Human Rights Report. The once comprehensive annual document was edited with what critics called the MAGA blue pencil, LGBTQ+ rights, gender-based violence, and racial discrimination slashed. The Gaza section vanished almost entirely, Israel's profile trimmed, El Salvador praised for having no credible abuse reports. Meanwhile, Europe, Brazil, and South Africa were placed squarely in the hot seat. Skeptics claimed objectivity had been replaced with political weaponry. The public memed it as Human Rights Report, Muaxar Edition, Less Truth, More Spin. Human Rights Watch outright called it propaganda, not a report. The State Department defended it as optimized for easier reading, while insiders jokingly labeled it streamlined bias. In European capitals, the episode was taken as a warning that the U.S. might abruptly redefine democracy to suit electoral theatrics. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas bluntly told Washington not to turn human rights reports into TikTok polls. Berlin groaned that everyone was talking about oppression of free speech as if it were a live stream buffering glitch. And in the midst of all this political theater, the June 2025 No King's Day protests still echoed worldwide. Over 5 million people in 2,100 cities holding signs like No Kings and No Tyrants, a clear rebuke to creeping authoritarian vibes. The event wasn't directly tied to the Human Rights Report or Kennedy Center flap, but it stood as a potent symbol of voter pushback. In sum, alongside the main plot, Gaza, power, and violations, there's clearly a PR team in the background rewriting the script, using reports and awards as marketing props. The opposition has spun these moves into a meme-ready emblem of human rights run through Excel. And with Trump, the world isn't just a political arena. It's a stage where he insists on being lead actor, director, and MC. A role nobody asked for, but from which no one can look away. Before the Gaza Riviera could even fade from the headlines, Trump's human rights agenda re-emerged, this time repackaging the U.S. Human Rights Report into what critics call an internal political tool. The 2024 edition was heavily revised, trimming or removing sections on LGBTQ+ rights, domestic violence, and racial discrimination. Gaza was erased entirely, and Israel and El Salvador were portrayed as virtually problem-free. In their place came critiques straight from the Trump playbook. Freedom crushed in Europe, Brazil and South Africa falling behind, while close political allies barely appeared at all. Senator Marco Rubio, who oversaw the project, insisted the report had been optimized for easier reading. Observers countered that it now resembled a MAGA kaleidoscope version of reality, cutting out inconvenient truths and adding partisan framing. Amnesty International went further, labeling it propaganda rather than a legitimate human rights tool. Then came the Kennedy Center scandal. Ana Navarro, the sharp-tongued host of The View, urged Gloria Gaynor to reject her Kennedy Center honors, arguing she couldn't accept it from a president who had gutted cultural programs, purged the former director, and installed Trump loyalists. Social media exploded with hashtags like "Yer don't do it, Gloria," and "Now Trump Isa stain." Trump's team fired back with, "He loves artists, just not cultural socialism." The fallout was immediate. Some artists refused to attend, donors pulled funding, and the prestigious honors ceremony became yet another political battlefield. Meanwhile, Trump announced he would allow journalists into Gaza, surprising since entry had long been under Israeli military control. He told Reuters he fully supports journalists witnessing humanitarian relief. There was a PR grab designed to reassure critics, but media quickly asked whether it was genuine press freedom or a distraction to soften his image abroad. In California, a separate firestorm erupted. Governor Gavin Newsom blasted Trump's demand for $1 billion in damages from UCLA as political extortion after pro-Palestinian campus protests. The administration froze hundreds of millions in federal funding, claiming UCLA had failed to protect Jewish students. Democrats framed it as an attack on academic freedom. Conservatives hailed it as shutting down woke justice in U.S. universities. Trump also escalated rhetoric on Gaza, declaring Hamas could not remain there forever.